I was making Mission Impossible Rogue Nation in London with Brian Burke, who was our erstwhile producer on on Into Darkness in '09, and he mentioned that they were thinking of restarting the process, and we were just kicking ideas around on the set of Mission Impossible. He was sort of talking about, you know, ways that we could go, and we had these very spirited discussions. And then I was on the set of, where was I? I remember he took me somewhere. Oh yeah, it was Mission, and he took me off. I thought he was going to assassinate me. Took me to a corner and just sort of said, "Do you want to write it?" And I kind of went, blah, blah, blah. And then, but he said yes. And then I met Doug in January. Very early January, for the first time. Doug, who's now my, absolute wingman and great friend. We had a very interesting 16 hours in a hotel room in London with me, Justin, Doug, and Lindsay Weber. And even despite that, we continued to work. We wrote the film. There was a lot of phone stuff. There was a lot of me coming home from Mission Impossible at 8:30 at night, and then being on a conference call to LA until God knows when. And then I went off to LA, and Doug and I, for the first time, spent time together, and we locked ourselves in the screening room at Bad Robot, and covered the whiteboards in there with ideas and hashed out a kind of rough structure for the movie. And then Doug came over to the UK, and he stayed with me at my house in Hertfordshire, and we spent a week just working at it solidly. We got a lot of work done that week. We watched a lot of Star Treks in the evening. When we'd done good stuff, we'd go and watch the original series, just to kind of, not just to enjoy it, but also to pick little details that we could feed into our universe as well, The names of red shirts and various personnel that could also exist in the Prime timeline. And then we kind of got a first draft together somehow. As soon as I started to see Justin work, I got him straight away, and became very sort of fascinated by his process, and really impressed by his choices, Doug and I both felt that they hadn't really ever addressed the practicalities of deep space travel in this way before, in terms of how being aboard a starship for that amount of time might have effect on you day to day, and the smaller issues of life, in terms of just little personal things, and how it might affect your mood and your attitude towards the mission. And we like the idea of questioning the rod and reverse a little bit, not just conceptually in terms of the big themes like unity and cooperation, but also in terms of having to wear the same uniform every day, And that became something important to us quite early on, and we thought we'd play with that and feed it into the general ennui that the crew have at this point. One of the notes that JJ always, directed towards us was the idea that he wanted the threat in the movie to have a very far-reaching effect, and in a way, he seemed to be keen that it always come back to Earth. Now, Earth is a very, very long way away now in this iteration of the story, and it was a sort of a slight dilemma for us, because how can we make Earth, a victim or a potential victim of whatever's going wrong here, with it being so far away? Because what we're trying to get across in this movie is that they're not anywhere near Earth anymore. They're light years away, and Earth is long gone. So we created a sort of proxy Earth, which is Yorktown. Yorktown was the name, I think, of Gene Roddenberry's, where the Enterprise was initially first called the Yorktown. So we took that name and we gave it to the space station. And it became a sort of representation of the Federation, a hub for the Federation and all the newly inducted worlds and the pre-existing inducted worlds. And it was in that one sort of globe, the Federation itself. So any threat to it was a threat by sort of association to Earth eventually. So that became our kind of our proxy Earth, as it were, I guess. The pairings came about sort of, I wouldn't say randomly, because we certainly put characters together who hadn't really spent much time together. Spock and McCoy was a key one, because I felt, and Doug felt, that we'd seen the Kirk-Spock relationship quite extensively in the previous two films. It's time to let that go for a while and come back to it later on when they've known each other a bit longer. I feel like they've been through almost a lifetime's journey in the first two films. We don't really need to kind of linger on that too much now. And the relationship between Spock and Bones has always been fascinating, to coin a phrase, and very funny, you know, because they are so diametrically opposed to each other in so many ways. And yet, somewhere there is a great friendship, and we wanted to explore that. With Scotty and Jayla, we like the idea of Scotty finding a kind of adept, young sort of engineer, like someone who has a mechanical skill which impresses him. With Uhura and Sulu, that changed around a little bit. There was a time when it was just Uhura in there, and then Sulu, I think Sulu was somewhere else and then came to the thing. But we kind of like the idea of those two as an odd pairing. And in terms of Chekhov and Kirk, it's just that you've got the boy and the man. You know, there's a great sort of interplay, juxtaposition between Chekhov's very excitable enthusiasm and Kirk's now faintly jaded kind of attitude towards things. So, yeah, those pairings all felt kind of right, you know. I feel like Scotty is probably the least bothered by everything. You know, he's in his element when he's in the engine room. He likes his job very much, and I'm sure he complains more than anyone, but he's probably the most satisfied of everybody. So I feel like he's not in a terrible place, you know. And when we join him, he's kind of doing his thing, which is to be in the guts of the ship, keeping it moving. You know, that's what he kind of lives for. I think the Star Trek persists and is here in its 50th year because it is such an optimistic idea. It's the rehearsal of the notion that we might not perish because of our own stupidity. It's the idea that we might actually succeed and become a noble and productive and, you know, inclusive, cooperative species. It's what we all kind of secretly hope for, I think. It's a universe where we're all accepted. It's a universe where there's no judgment or prejudice. It's all about hope. It offers us our own future, the idea of our own future writ large, and it's such an irresistible thing, you know. And as long as we, you know, have some hope that we might not become victims of our own sort of hubris, people will love it, you know. And this feels like such a big deal, this one, not just because it's the 50th one, but it's the first Star Trek since we lost Leonard Nimoy, and there's a lot of significance in this one in terms of its symbolic meaning, and the weight of that hasn't ever felt light on myself and Doug's shoulders, or Justin, or Lindsay, or JJ, or anybody, I'm sure. It means a lot to us that this film kind of resonates with the fans and with people who've never seen Star Trek, you know.